The first time I slipped into a dress, my hands trembled so badly I could barely fasten the zipper. It was my sister's, left behind when she moved out years ago, and I had hidden it in the back of my closet like a guilty secret. The fabric felt alien against my skin, smooth and light in a way my usual clothes never did. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize myself. Or rather, I did, in a way I never had before. The reflection showed a version of me I had only ever imagined, soft, delicate, right? But the moment my father's heavy footsteps creaked down the hallway, I tore it off like it was on fire, stuffing it back into the shadows where it belonged. That was the beginning, the first crack in the dam. I had always known, in some vague, unspoken way, that I wasn't like other boys. I didn't just want to be a girl, I ached for it. The way they moved, the way they dressed, the way the world treated them like something precious. I envied it all. But in my house, there was no room for that kind of longing. My father was a man's man, hard hands, harder words, and my mother, though kinder, never questioned the rules. So I learned to fold myself into smaller and smaller shapes, hiding the truth so deep even I could almost pretend it wasn't there. Almost. The urges never went away. If anything, they grew stronger. I started stealing moments, a scarf wrapped around my neck when no one was home, a pair of tights hidden under my jeans on winter days. Each tiny rebellion felt like a sip of water after years in a desert. But it wasn't enough. I wanted to live it, to walk down the street and have strangers see her, not him. Then came the night, everything shattered. I had gotten bolder, buying my own clothes from thrift stores in neighboring towns where no one knew me. I kept them in a duffel bag under my bed, a secret treasure trove of silks and skirts. But my father found them. I came home to see my dresses strewn across the living room floor like evidence of a crime. His face was purple with rage, his voice a whip. Freak. Disgrace. Get out. I left that night with nothing but the clothes on my back and the duffel bag clutched in my arms. The first few days were a blur of bus stations and park benches. I had a little money saved, but it vanished quickly. Hunger gnawed at me, but worse was the fear of being recognized, of being hurt, of never finding a way back to myself. But in a strange way, being homeless was also freeing. For the first time in my life, no one was watching. No one cared if I wore a dress or let my hair grow or painted my nails in the dim light of a public restroom. I learned the rhythms of the streets, where to find food, which shelters were safe, how to disappear in plain sight. And slowly I began to change. I let my hair grow past my shoulders, soft waves that framed my face. I practiced makeup in gas station bathrooms, smudged eyeliner, and stolen lipstick. My voice, always too high for a man, became something I no longer fought. People started seeing me differently. Not as a boy in a dress, but as a girl. Maybe a little rough around the edges, but a girl all the same. The first time a stranger called me miss, I nearly cried. It wasn't easy. There were nights so cold I thought I wouldn't wake up, days when the hunger was a living thing inside me. I was chased, threatened, laughed at. But I also found kindness in unexpected places. A diner waitress who slipped me free meals, a librarian who let me nap in a quiet corner, a group of queer kids who took me in for a week and taught me how to tuck and walk in heels. Eventually, I found a shelter that helped transgender people. They gave me a bed, a shower, and, for the first time, hope. With their help, I got a job at a cafe where the manager didn't care what I wore as long as I showed up on time. I saved every penny, and after months of scraping by, I rented a tiny room in a shared apartment. It wasn't much, just 4 walls and a mattress, but it was mine. The first night I spent there, I put on the prettiest dress I owned, twirled in front of the mirror, and cried. Not from sadness, but from relief. For the first time in my life, I was home. I still have scars from the streets, from my family, from the years I spent pretending. But I wear them like the dresses I once hid, with pride. Because every step I took, no matter how hard, led me here. To a life where I can finally be me. And that's worth everything. The first few months in my own space felt like learning how to breathe all over again. I had spent so long shrinking myself, hiding in shadows, folding my body into shapes that didn't fit. That waking up in a room where no one could tell me no was dizzying. I bought a full-length mirror from a thrift store and propped it against the wall, something I never would have dared before. Some mornings, I just stood there, tracing the curves I had created with padded bras and cinched waists, marveling at how natural it felt. Like I was finally putting together a puzzle I hadn't even known was missing pieces. Work at the cafe was exhausting but safe. The manager, a gruff but kind woman named Rita, never asked questions when I showed up with chipped nail polish or a new shade of lipstick. The regulars didn't stare, or if they did, I stopped noticing. I was just the girl who makes the coffee, and that was enough. But the streets had left their mark. I still startled at loud noises, still slept with one eye open. Nightmares dragged me back to park benches and the sour stench of fear. Some days, the loneliness was so thick I could barely move. I had friends now, other trans girls from the shelter, queer kids who hung around the cafe, but there was a hollowness inside me that no amount of laughter could fill. I missed my family, even though they didn't miss me. Then I met Elise. She was a regular at the cafe, always ordering the same lavender latte without milk. At first, I only noticed her because of her style. Vintage dresses, gloves, hair always perfectly pinned. She looked like she'd stepped out of an old movie. One slow afternoon, she lingered by the counter and asked, "Do you ever do your makeup like Veronica Lake?" I blinked. "Who?" She laughed, and the sound was warm, like sunlight through a window. "Oh, honey, we have work to do." Elise became my first real guide into womanhood, not just the survival of it, but the joy. She taught me how to shape my brows, how to walk in heels without wobbling, how to sew a hem when thrift store dresses didn't fit right. But more than that, she taught me that being a woman wasn't just about passing or pretty clothes. It was about claiming space. "You don't apologize for existing," she told me once, red lips curving into a smirk. Not ever. For the first time, I started to believe her. But the past has a way of catching up. One evening, as I walked home from work, a familiar voice stopped me cold. "Sam?" My brother stood on the sidewalk, his face a mix of shock and something else, guilt? Pity? My stomach twisted. I hadn't seen him since the night I left. He looked older, tired. "It's Sophie now," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Dad's sick," he said finally. "He won't admit it, but he's asking for you." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "Asking for me? Or the son he thinks he lost?" My brother didn't answer, but his silence was answer enough. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Part of me wanted to go back, to demand they see me for who I was. But another part, the part that still flinched at raised voices, knew nothing had changed. Except I had. I didn't go home, but I did start writing letters. To my mother, to my brother, even one to my father that I knew I'd never send. I wrote about the girl they never met, the one who had been there all along. I didn't ask for forgiveness. I didn't ask for anything. I just let the words exist, like I was finally letting myself exist. Months passed. Seasons changed. I saved up enough to start hormone therapy, and the first time I looked in the mirror and saw her, really saw her, without padding or contouring, I sobbed. Not the desperate, gasping cries of the girl on the streets, but something quieter. Something like relief. Elise took me out that night to celebrate. We went dancing at a queer club where the lights were bright and no one cared who we used to be. I wore a red dress, the kind I would have been too afraid to touch a year ago. When a stranger spun me on the dance floor and called me beautiful, I believed him. I still think about that night I left home sometimes. The cold, the fear, the way the stars looked brighter when I had nothing left to lose. I don't regret it, because sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself. And I did. I found her. The hormones did more than change my body. They softened the edges of the world. The sharp, ever-present anxiety that had lived in my chest since childhood dulled into something manageable. I still had bad days, of course. Days when my reflection felt wrong no matter how much makeup I applied. days when the world seemed determined to remind me I didn't quite belong. But for the first time, I had good days too. Days where I'd catch my reflection in a store window and smile without thinking. Days where my voice didn't feel like a costume. Elise became my anchor through it all. She took me to my first Pride parade, her arm looped through mine as we marched down streets painted in rainbows. I had never seen so many people like me, trans women older than my parents holding hands with their partners, teenagers with dyed hair and fearless smiles, drag queens towering above the crowd in glitter and sequins. For the first time, I wasn't the only one. The realization hit me like a physical force, and I had to stop walking for a moment, overwhelmed by the sheer normalcy of it all. This, Elise shouted over the music, squeezing my hand, is what they don't want you to see. How many of us there are. I squeezed back, my throat too tight to speak. But life wasn't all parades and epiphanies. There were still bills to pay, shifts to work, and the ever-present fear of being found out. Even in the cafe, where Rita didn't care and the regulars were kind, I caught the occasional stare, the whispered comment. Most days, I brushed it off. But sometimes, like when a group of college boys snickered as I took their order, or when an older woman recoiled after hearing my voice, the shame crept back in, sticky and familiar. Then came the day I met Mara. She was new to the city, another trans girl fresh off the bus with nothing but a backpack and a nervous smile. I recognized the look in her eyes, the same lost, hunted expression I'd worn when I first stumbled into the shelter. She ordered the cheapest thing on the menu and lingered near the outlet to charge her phone, her hands shaking slightly as she scrolled. I didn't think. I just slid into the seat across from her and said, "Hey, you okay?" She flinched, then looked up at me with wary hope. "Not really," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I pushed my lunch toward her, a sandwich I'd been saving for my break. "Eat first," I said. "Then we'll figure it out." That night, Mara slept on my floor in a nest of blankets. She smelled like sweat and bus stations, and she apologized 3 times for existing before I finally snapped. "Stop. You don't have to do that here." She blinked at me, then burst into tears. It was strange, seeing my own past reflected in someone else. Mara was where I had been, scared, hungry, convinced she didn't deserve help. But helping her made me realize how far I'd come. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. And now I could pull someone else up with me. Elise helped me find Mara a bed at the same shelter that had saved me. Within a week, she had a job interview at a bookstore down the street. Watching her try on blouses in my tiny apartment, fussing over which one made her look professional enough, I felt a fierce, protective pride. "You're gonna kill it," I told her, adjusting the collar of her shirt. She bit her lip. "What if they know?" "Then fuck 'em," I said, echoing the words Elise had once said to me. "You're not asking for permission to exist. You're telling them you do." Mara got the job. Life settled into a rhythm. Work, friends, stolen moments of joy. I even started dating, tentatively, nervously. A non-binary barista named Jamie who made terrible puns and always remembered my coffee order. Our first kiss was awkward and perfect, their hands gentle on my waist as if they were afraid I'd break. I didn't. And then, one rainy afternoon, my brother called. "Mom wants to see you," he said, no preamble. I nearly dropped my phone. "Why?" A pause. "She's been different since Dad died." The words landed like a punch. My father, the man who had thrown me out, the man whose voice still haunted my nightmares, was gone. And with him, the last thread of the life I'd left behind. I didn't go to the funeral, but a month later, I found myself standing outside my childhood home, my stomach in knots. The house looked smaller than I remembered. My mother opened the door before I could knock. She looked older, her hair grayer, but her eyes were the same. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Then, softly, she said, "You look beautiful." I didn't cry. Not then. But later, when she hesitantly handed me a box of my sister's old clothes, I thought, maybe you'd like these better than she did. I had to excuse myself to the bathroom, where I pressed a towel to my face to muffle the sobs. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was something. A beginning, maybe. That night, back in my apartment, I texted Jamie, "You free tomorrow? I want you to meet my mom." Then I looked in the mirror, really looked, and smiled at the woman staring back. She was happy. And she was home. The first dinner with my mother and Jamie was awkward in the way that important things often are, full of stilted conversation and too long pauses where the past hung heavy between us. But there were moments, too, that shimmered with something like hope. The way my mother's eyes softened when Jamie complimented her cooking. The way she hesitated, then reached across the table to adjust my necklace, her fingers brushing my collarbone like she was relearning me. "It's good to see you," she said quietly as we left, and I knew she didn't just mean tonight. Progress with my family came in fits and starts. My brother started texting me memes, stupid, harmless things that required no emotional vulnerability, but said I'm trying all the same. My mother sent birthday cards signed to Sophie in shaky handwriting. It wasn't perfect, but it was more than I'd ever dared hope for. Meanwhile, my life kept expanding. Jamie and I moved in together. A tiny one-bedroom with peeling wallpaper and a bathtub that only got properly hot if you kicked the pipes. It was perfect. We painted the walls lavender and filled the space with thrifted furniture and plants we kept accidentally killing. Elise came over every Sunday for what she called debutante lessons, mostly just drinking cheap wine while she taught us which fork to use at fancy restaurants we'd never visit. Mara became a constant in our lives too. She got her own place eventually, but she still showed up at our door every Friday night with takeout and a new dating disaster to recount. Watching her flourish, her confidence growing with each passing month, made me proud in a way I couldn't explain. Then, one ordinary Tuesday, everything changed again. I was at work when the email came through. The LGBTQ+ Center, where I sometimes volunteered, was starting a new outreach program for homeless trans youth, and they wanted me to help run it. "You have first-hand experience," the director wrote. "These kids need someone who understands." My hands shook as I read the offer. It wasn't just a job, it was a chance to be the person I'd needed so badly that night on the streets. The first day at the center, I nearly backed out a dozen times. Who was I to think I could help anyone? But then a girl walked in, maybe 17, her too big hoodie swallowing her frame, eyes darting like she expected to be thrown out any second, and I recognized that look. That hunger. "Hey," I said, pushing a cup of hot chocolate toward her. "I'm Sophie. You safe?" She stared at me for a long moment before nodding. You're like me?" I smiled and rolled up my sleeve, showing the faint scars on my forearm, some from the streets, some from before.
"Yeah.
I'm like you." Her shoulders relaxed, just a little. That became my life. Some days were heartbreaking, kids showing up with bruises or empty stomachs, or that hollow look that comes from too much suffering too young. But other days were miracles. Watching someone's face light up when they got their first binder or hormone prescription. Hearing laughter echo through the center's common room. Seeing a kid walk in with their head down and walk out standing tall. Jamie teased that I'd become a professional big sister, but they were just as bad. Always showing up with homemade cookies or offering to drive kids to job interviews. Even Elise got roped in, holding impromptu makeup tutorials in the center's bathroom. One evening, as I was locking up, Mara's appeared in the doorway. "Remember when you found me?" she asked abruptly. "Of course." She held out a stack of papers, job applications from the bookstore. I convinced my manager to hire from the center. Got 3 interviews set up already. I hugged her so tight she squeaked. Years ago, I'd become homeless to live as myself. Now I had a home, not just a roof over my head, but a purpose, a family I'd chosen, a love that didn't demand I shrink. Some nights, I still dreamed of park benches and hunger. But when I woke, it was to Jamie's arms around me, to sunlight streaming through lavender curtains, to a life I'd built with my own 2 hands. The girl in the mirror smiled back at me these days. She was scarred, yes, but she was strong, and she was free. Thank you so much for watching till now. It means the world to have you here. This community is all about empowering each other and celebrating the incredible journeys of everyone on their path to living authentically. If you're ever feeling lost or alone, remember you have a whole family here for you. Hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, and let's keep inspiring each other, sending you all the love and strength in the world. Until next time, live your life by your rules.